So we just took a quiz over the land of Canaan, the material that we covered there. Now we're moving on to the next civilization, and with whom there's going to be quite a lot of interaction between Assyria and Israel and in the land of Canaan. So Assyria is what we're looking at next in your notes. And I think you'll find this nation quite interesting. It's called the Assyrian Empire, sometimes called the Neo-Assyrian Empire, because there was an Assyrian Empire in the past that we are not dealing with. We're looking at the what's called the Neo-Assyrian, although many people just call it the Assyrian Empire. Okay, one of the things that we note about the Assyrian Empire is that they had developed a highly centralized bureaucracy. Do we remember what a bureaucracy is? Raise your hand if you need me to remind you what is a bureaucracy. Okay. So when I ask if we know that, please respond right away, or I'll assume that you don't. Don't make me ask you to raise your hand every time. Okay, so volunteer that you need me to tell you something. A bureaucracy, I'm not sure if I'll explain it this way to you before or not, but how many of you know what a bureau is? Like at home you have a piece of furniture called a bureau. We don't have bureaus anymore. That's an old-fashioned piece of furniture. Okay, how about a chest of drawers? Do you have that? Do you have a piece of furniture in your bedroom maybe that has drawers in it? Okay, a bureau is a piece of furniture that has drawers. Okay, so a bureaucracy is a bureau, which doesn't help you if you don't know what a bureau is, so never mind that illustration. A bureaucracy is when government has a lot of different agencies that run different things in the government. So it's very organized, in other words. So there are different people in charge of different aspects of what the government does. So in our country, for example, we have a quite extensive bureaucracy. So when we think of different agencies of our government, they are generally agencies which enforce rules upon us, which were not put there by our representatives. So we didn't vote for the people that are making these rules. They're just operating on their own. For example, the Environmental Protection Agency. Have you ever heard of that? Sometimes they'll tell people you can't build on your own land. You can't develop your own land because even though it's a swamp, there may be some frog that lives there, and we're afraid that you're going to disrupt his habitat. You know, or or OSHA, which looks into workplace items, and they say they govern over what you can and cannot do in a factory, in a workplace, or an office, or whatever. The Internal Revenue Service, IRS. I'm sure you've heard of that, right? Your parents probably talk about that sometime in April. They're the ones that oversee the collection of taxes. Well, they are collecting taxes that the Congress does enact, but not necessarily what they do or how they do it. So those are all government agencies, and there are many, many more that have an impact on our lives. Well, Assyria developed a bureaucracy. That means they had a strong central government. So the government that was overseeing Assyria wasn't divided up among a bunch of provinces. It was a strong central government, and there was a bureaucracy that was overseeing it. Okay? So that's the first thing to notice. Secondly, and this is the thing that makes Assyria stand out, is that when they conquered peoples, they employed mass execution and mass deportation of those they conquered. Okay, let's talk first about the mass execution. There are inscriptions that have been found on the palace in the city of Nimrud, describing the brutal sadism of Ashurbanipal II. He's one of the guys that we'll look at. This is what he wrote. I built a pillar over against his city gate, and I flayed all the chiefs who had revolted. Now, what's it mean to flay? Something, you know? I read the rest of the sentence, maybe you'll get an idea. I flayed all the chiefs who had revolted, and I covered the pillar with their skin. What's it mean to flay someone? Did you understand what was happening here? What's it mean to flay? Stephen, what did he do to the chiefs that revolted? Huh? Did you hear the last part of that sentence? I built a pillar, and then I covered the pillar with their skin.
Killed them.
What did he do to them? Not just kill them. What did he do, Noah?
He skinned them.
He skinned them. Do you see, if you covered the pillar with their skin, you had to take the skin off of them. Did you see that? Does that make sense? Yeah. And he didn't kill them first. So he skinned them alive, and then took their skins and covered a pillar with it. Is that pretty brutal? Some, and then listen to what else. Some I walled up within the pillar. What does that mean?
Say that again?
When he constructed the pillar, what did he do with some of the men some of his enemies?
He put their bodies in.
Not their bodies, them. He put them inside this pillar as he made it, which meant that they were inside, walled inside, alive. He's not done. Some I impaled upon the pillar on stakes. What's it mean to be impaled?
Like stabbed for real.
Yeah, so that means he's got stakes sticking out of the pillar, and he takes these men by their bodies and shoves them right down on the pillar, on the stake. So the stake goes up through their body. Still alive. Others I bound to the stakes around the pillar, and I cut the limbs off the officers. What are the limbs? Arms and legs. Cut them off. They're still alive. Cut off their arms and legs about the pillar of the royal officers who had rebelled. Many captives from among them I burned with fire, still alive. And I took many as living captives. From some I cut off their noses, their ears, and their fingers. Of many I put out their eyes. I made one pillar of the living, and in other words, he bunched up the living ones. He put them together and made a pillar out of them. And another of their heads. He made a pillar of heads. And I bound their heads to tree trunks around the city. Their young men and maidens I burned in the fire. 20 men I captured alive, and I immured them in the wall of his palace. Immured, I will explain in another quotation here. The rest of their warriors I consumed with thirst in the desert of the Euphrates. Okay, then is another quotation. He says this, I erected a wall in front of the great gate of the city. I flayed the chiefs and covered this wall with their skins. Some of them were walled in alive in the masonry. Others were impaled along the wall. I flayed a great number of them in my presence, and I clothed the wall with their skins. I collected their heads in the form of crowns, and their corpses I pierced in the shape of garlands. My figure blooms on the ruins. In the glutting of my rage, I find my content. So the immured them in the wall means he basically put them inside the wall as it was being built. So what kind of people were these?
Nice. Insane.
Nice. Very nice.
Very nice. Now, if you were a city,
Very nice.
if you were living in a city and you heard the Assyrians were coming,
Get out of there.
Dude.
you'd want to get out of there. But if you got nowhere to go, what are you going to do?
Hide.
Okay.
What's the most realistic thing you can do? which explains why they did this wherever they went. What's the most realistic thing that you should do if you hear the Assyrians are coming?
Run.
You may not get very far. Where are you going to go? To another city?
Yeah.
And they'll come there too. All right.
Running.
So you're eventually going to run out of cities. So what are you going to do? What can you do? What's the best thing you could do?
John said.
Basically, you have two choices. Right? When an enemy comes, what are your choices?
Fight.
Fight,
Or
or
die.
well, you die if you fight, probably, at least against them. It's not a question of fighting or dying. What's the option if you don't fight?
Hide. I don't know.
A whole city hide?
Yeah.
What could a city do?
I'm not gonna say.
Are you not familiar with the word surrender?
Oh.
Isn't that the other option? Either fight or surrender. If you fight, then and you can't beat them, that's what's going to happen to you. So, do you think a lot of cities just surrendered?
Yes.
Yeah. Because the Assyrians are extremely brutal. Okay, let's continue here. Well, let's look at another picture we have. Here are some drawings of the Assyrians. This is taken from a relief. This is just a drawing that somebody made, probably having looked at a carving on the walls. But you can see here. See what this guy's carrying?
Heads.
Yeah, somebody's head. See this guy's stretched out. Can't tell exactly what they're doing to him, but it's not nice. This guy is stretched out too. This guy looks like he's got a knife. What's he doing?
Skinning him.
He's skinning him.
Wow.
Looks like he's doing something to this guy's head. Here, what's this guy look like he's doing?
Rip out his jaw.
Ripping out.
Yeah, he's reaching down inside his mouth, maybe ripping out his tongue,
Oh.
doing something in there. So they even put this stuff in their drawings on their walls. So brutal people. All right, that's looking at the characteristics of the Assyrians. Tomorrow we're going to get into seeing them as God's instruments. God's going to use these people, of all things, for judgment. Yeah. So the rest of the time, let's work on the assignment you have. It's on the board up there, and that is to read and take notes on pages 40 to middle of 41. So page and a half, that's all. But then I want you to read some chapters in Daniel. Read Daniel chapters 1 through 4 and chapters 7 to 8. Daniel 1 to 4 and 7 to 8.